In this video, I'm going to show you how I made this iPhone app using no code with React Native and Expo with Expo Router. It took me no coding skills and I was able to build the entire app into production in under 1 hour. I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, we're going to open up a new project in Cursor. So let's go ahead and do that. Open project. I'm just going to go ahead in my desktop and open the project. So this is just going to open up my desktop. I have a few projects already on my desktop, but I am going to build a new project. So let's start over here on the right side in Cursor with our cursor agent. There are, of course, a few different ways to interact with cursor. I prefer the agent. The agent is what will actually perform tasks for us. Right now, I'm just using auto because we're just getting started, but you have the option to select which model you want to use. We'll just go ahead and do auto for now. This will serve our purposes just fine. So I'm going to tell it exactly what I want and how I want to develop this. So this app that we're going to build, it's going to be a daily affirmations app that is going to let us regenerate a new affirmation every day when we wake up. We're just going to click a button. It's going to call an AI service. It's going to call an AI model, an LLM. We're going to use GPT-4, maybe GPT 3.5. Should be fine for our services. And it's going to generate a new affirmation for us every single day. So that's the purpose of this app. We're going to build it right now. So before we get started, let's break down a little bit how exactly we're going to build this app. So the kind of frameworks that we're going to use, the language that we're going to write everything in, and the architecture of the app. So the database that we're going to use, how everything will be connected, the navigation of the actual UI. So it's important to have all of that set first and to understand how you're going to build that before starting to prompt the LLM, the agent in Cursor. If you have all of that set up before, it just makes it a lot easier than you having to figure it out later when you're already halfway through your project and you don't know how half this stuff works and what you're gonna have to do to fix it. So it's just much easier to figure all of that out in the beginning, understand how your project is going to be structured, how you want to lay out each screen, how you want the data to come in and be transferred around, passed around in the app, what you want to do to interact with the data, and then how you want to display that data. Those are the core components of the app. So we're going to start off here and we're going to tell it exactly what we want. So we want a app that, does the daily affirmations for us, but we're also going to explain to it, look, we want it to be in React Native. We want it to use Expo, and we want it to just use the user's own phone storage for the, storage of the data. We don't really need to create a complex database and have a backend that stores the data for the user. This is a pretty simple app, so we're not going to be bothered to set up a database with Firebase or Supabase or anything like that. All we're going to do is take in the data from OpenAI, store it on the user's phone. Maybe we'll store like 10 affirmations or maybe 30 affirmations for the whole month, and then just automatically delete that. But we don't need to worry about that. So That's kind of how our app is going to look. And then we're going to tell it we want just basic UI components. And we're going to use OpenAI for the AI service. So we actually have a few prompts that we're going to share, that I'm going to share in the description that you can click on. But yeah, we're going to set all of that up first before we write any code. So let's just start typing into the agent. I want to create a React Native Expo app that generates daily affirmations for the user. This will use basic React components from Expo as well as Expo Router. So Expo Router is a navigation service within Expo, which is the framework that sits on top of React Native, which is the language that we're going to, which is also another framework, but which is what we're going to actually write our app in. So that's how all this stuff fits in together, as well as Expo Router, and call on OpenAI to generate the actual affirmation every day. The user will be able to generate the affirmation at their own calling via a button that will sit in the center of the screen. Let's lay out a plan for how we will execute on this, starting with the project structure, the folders and files we will need to set up, the data we will need to get and store, optional, and best security practices around our API key storage. So this is a really crucial point where, you know, a lot of people miss this, especially in this new world of vibe coding, where you're prompting the LLM to do the coding for you. So you might not understand every single bit of code that it writes. One of the biggest things is security around your own keys, your own API keys, and you want to make sure you're operating in a way where you are never exposing your own API keys. So that's just something that we need to be aware of. And I'm going to put in the description how you can do this safely, what the best practices are around this. For the purposes of this video, we're just going to do this the most simple way possible. But for any kind of production app, you would never want to have an API key exposed. Okay, so I think this is a pretty good start. Let's lay out the plan first. Our process to implement each step and anything we need to be aware of before we start? I am a non-coder, so you will have to be my guide as we go through this process. Please summarize and explain each step after you perform it so I can understand each part of my code base. So I like to just copy the whole thing and copy my prompt, Control C, copy it, just to have it in case, you know, this thing lags or this thing just kind of crashes out or what have you. All right, here we go. Let's get started. So, absolutely, here's a clear step-by-step plan for building your daily affirmations React Native app with Expo using OpenAI for affirmation generation. I'll break down the project structure, files, data, security, and implementation process, and I'll explain each step in simple terms. Project structure. We'll organize the app for clarity and scalability following best practices. Okay. Affirmations is the main folder, app, tabs within app, index.tsx. And here, this is where cursor is really powerful. It's going to actually explain what each of these folders or files does. So within affirmations, affirmations is our main folder. We might have to change that because I already have a folder named affirmations, but you know, we can call it affirmations 2, what have you. Within affirmations, we have our main app folder, which has here it says our main app logic, the screens, and the navigation, which we'll be using app Expo Router. Then we have tabs, optional for future tab navigation, index.tsx. This is the home screen, and this is defined by Expo Router, where your main home screen is going to live. If you're going to use Expo Router for navigation, your app folder is the one that's going to have your main navigation logic, and your index.tsx file is the one that's going to actually define that navigation logic. Your next folder, our next folder is going to be components. So components are UI components that we can reuse in various screens that we're going to define in our app folder. So these are, you know, buttons, cards, any kind of like little tabs, little kind of units that we make and we just want to be able to reuse over and over. We're going to put in our components folder. Hooks. So these are custom functions that we are going to write that we can use over and over. So if, you know, components or UI components we can reuse over and over. Hooks are more kind of back-end services that we can reuse over and over. Live, this is like library, but utility function. So this is more for kind of external services. So like an OpenAI API call. The ways these two work together is this will define our OpenAI service. It'll say, you know, this is how we're going to prompt OpenAI. This is the data that we're going to pass forward. This is the data that we're going to collect back. And this is how it's going to come back and how it's like the string, like, and we're going to define how it's going to come back to us, which is going to be in a string. The hook is what calls that service within our app. And that's how we're going to use our hook within our app. Our assets, these are, you know, images, fonts, things like that. So this is where we would put our logo in the future, and any kind of other photos, videos, any kind of other, you know, external assets that we're going to use within our app. Those will all go and live in there. Constants, this is how we're going to store our API key and kind of like put other you know, external API keys. So if we set up a paywall or any kind of other APIs that we're going to use in the future, those will all go there. Types. This is how we define various types for, you know, how we're going to pass data types around and how we're going to pass also UI types as well. So like interfaces. App.json. So this is how we actually define the configuration of the app. Package.json defines our dependencies. tsconfig is our TypeScript configuration and d.env are environment variables. So this will be our secure way to store API keys. All right. So that's how our folders will look. Here in our here cursor kind of explains that for us. The data flow and storage. So the data that we're going to get is just the generated affirmation. And the optional bit is if we want to store the last one locally. So if the user comes back to the app, they'll see that one until they generate a new one. Again, this is optional. We don't really need it, but especially for an app like this, but it's something we can implement very easily. So the data flow, the user presses the button, app calls OpenAI, affirmation is displayed on the screen. Optional, save the affirmation locally for the day. Security, API key storage, never hard code your OpenAI API key in the code base. This is the same thing that we mentioned. Best practice, use environment variables like .env and a library like Expo constants or React Native .env to access the key. And this is another thing. So we can put in a file in our code base called gitignore. And this will ignore whatever. It will just not pass to Git or GitHub. That's where we're going to store our our code base. It will just not pass that variable or that whole file and all of its contents. It just won't pass that, so nobody else can see that if you store those variables there. When we put this into production, what we can do is we can use what are called secret keys. So we're going to build using EAS here, which is Expo Application Services. And within EAS, we have a way to store secret keys. So you don't have to put anything in your code base at all in terms of OpenAI API keys or any other API keys at all. You can just store them in the secret keys using EAS, and they will actually be put into your code base and compiled at the build time. So you don't have to worry about that now. We're actually just going to use it in the app and not worry about that because this is not a production grade app at this point. But that's just something for us to think about for the future when we do start creating production grade apps. So the implementation process, step-by-step plan, set up the Expo project, initialize with TypeScript and Expo Router, set up the project structure, create folders and placeholder files as above, create the main screen, center the button, placeholder for affirmation, build the reusable components, implement OpenAI API call, create custom hook, handle API key securely, store last affirmation locally, optional, and polish the UI. So here we go. The first thing that it's telling us to be aware of is the API key security that we talked about. API costs, these are pretty minimal, as we'll see. Error handling and app store review. So let's go ahead and start. So we're going to use the agent to really execute the majority of our tasks, including even setting up the folders within our desktop. So we're still on our desktop here, right? Let's now go. Well, Sure. Let's ask it right here. Yes, please. Let's go to step 1. Let's see what it tells us. Here's what we'll do in step 1, initialize the Expo project. In another video, I will explain all of the cursor settings or base settings that we're going to actually want to set up in the beginning, but I won't do that now. But just the main thing to consider here is in the features, I would turn off this enable auto run mode right here, where it can just do it can just run commands for you without asking. So yeah, I would not do that. It can go haywire at times. Okay, let's go back here. What does this do? npx create expo app. This just creates a new Expo app for us with the templates that we would want, called Affirmations. -T uses the blank template with TypeScript enabled. Okay. We'll install the Expo router for navigation. Okay, fair enough. Now, I kind of want to test something here. First of all, we're going to have to call it Affirmations 2. And I kind of just want to see what happens here if we don't put in the template and it asks me about a template right here, because I think it should ask me. Okay, using the default template. Okay. So that might not be ideal for us. Because the template with the TypeScript settings, it might have been a little bit more ideal. But anyways, here we see that we have a new project created. It has, I'm not sure why it has this. Yeah, this is a mistake on our end. Let's delete this. Okay, here we go. Now we need to change this to Affirmations 2. Here we go. We see that created. We can see the folders that it's adding for us. Okay. Now, I've run this command. Let's move to the next step. Okay, here we go. Now we need to go in and we need to add these folders that we need to set up our projects, so like Expo Router, stuff like this, right? Let's go in. We did this already, but our new project is called Affirmations 2. Now we need to install Expo Router and all its dependencies. Okay, let's do that. Now, it does not quite understand our folder structure completely. We don't have our app folder. So it's telling us to create certain files that we don't necessarily have yet, or what have you. You can see there's a mismatch here. So the best part about Cursor is that we can add folders to it that it can read. So we'll first tell it I had to rename my project Affirmations 2 because the other name was already taken. Please read through my folders and files and see what all needs updating. Then let's proceed with those changes. Now look, we've completed the step to add Expo Router, right? We can see it right here, added config plugin, Expo Router. So this is fine. But now we need to do the folder structure. I've already completed the step to add Expo Router. Okay. Okay, here we go. Current state analysis. We have project folder Affirmations 2, Expo and TypeScript setup, tsconfig.json, where we can click that and we can see the settings that we have here. Compiler option, strict is true. This basically just makes our secure. It just adds a few checks for security, so it won't let us expose any kind of data that we don't want to expose. Expo Router and dependencies installed, confirmed in package.json, so we can see the dependencies here in package.json. We have Expo, Expo status bar, React Native, Expo Router, React Native safe area context, React Native screens. Okay. Now, folders, assets, but not yet components, hooks, lib, constant, or types. The main entry is still using the default Expo structure, app.tsx and index.ts, not the Expo Router structure. What needs updating? Okay. We need to create the following folders. We need to create the new Expo Router structure and change the old entry points so we use the new router structure. Okay. Now we need a dot and we need a dot environment. Okay. And step-by-step changes. Now it'll tell us exactly what to do now, right? Make all these directories. So let's just copy that and let's paste it in here. And now we'll see all these directories exist. Okay. Components, constants, hooks, lib, app. Okay. Now this next step, move to app directory. create index.tsx. Okay, now let's just delete that. Well, let's delete index.ts. It was importing the app. We don't need it. Okay. Now within the app, we got some error here. We'll figure that out in a sec. No inputs were found in config file. So with this, the best thing to do is just to ask cursor, but we'll first do these things. New file in here. Let's name it underscore layout.tsx. Okay, that's the router layout. And we see that our error just went away. Index.tsx. Okay, cool. So now we're using the Expo Router, the new format that Expo suggests. And so yeah, we're just going to be using that from now on. And we'll create the new .env file that exists now. We can see it added the AI features disabled. It's on track, so we can see it's doing exactly what we want. It even says on track right here. Okay, cool. So git ignore. We can see in here we can add what we want to ignore. We can just add the .env. Okay, cool. Control S, save that. All right. Cool. So we've done the basics. I will create okay, well, don't worry about that. Let's just reject that for now. Okay, it's making changes on our behalf in the layout.tsx and the index.tsx and layout.tsx. Okay, cool. Now these are created. This is created. Components, hooks, live, constants, types. These are created. This is removed. All right. I've created the missing folders myself. Please check the folders and files for me and ensure everything is set up correctly. Then let's proceed with the next step in our initial plan. This is one thing I also really like to do is please create a summary chart of all of the tasks we had laid out and where we are in the process right now. All right. So let's see what it comes back with. Okay, it's listing the items. It's going through and scanning. Okay. There we go. Initialize Expo project with TypeScript complete. Install and set up Expo Router complete. Create project folder structure complete. Set up router layout and home screen complete. Okay, so have we actually done this? Let's test it out now, right? We can see it's put in some basic stuff for us, like, a view, some text. Let's now test it out. I'd like to test out the app now and make sure the basic elements work. How do we test this in Expo Go? So Expo Go is an app on our phone. Excuse me, it's on our phone. It looks just like this. As you can see my screen, if you can see my phone there. So Expo Go is going to connect with us with our phone and our laptop. So it's going to run on Expo servers, but we need to be connected on the same network. So just make sure you're on the same Wi-Fi with your laptop, and then you can start. So the command here is npx expo start. So you hit that, and you should see this QR code pop up. And on my iPhone, I see Affirmations 2 as a server now that I can click. And we see immediately there was a problem running the app, right? So this is why you want to test immediately. So here we go, configure, cannot resolve entry file, package.json. So here we go. It is going to a file that it cannot resolve. Main is index.ts. So our main, so this is what was happening, is our main screen was set to index.ts, and we changed that. We removed that file, right? So what you can do here is you can do this, add to the chat, right? Lines 117 to 119 right here. I'm getting this error when running the app. How do we resolve this? So I kind of already know the fix, which is going to be to, change the main, to, instead of this, it should be app/index.tsx probably. Right, change it to, okay, interesting. Expo Router entry. Let's see now. Okay. So let's see. We can just do that. Now we save. Now we do Control-C to kill the server and then just restart it. So let's go back to our phone and rebuild the app on our phone. And now Affirmations 2, we can see that it's building, it's bundling the app, it's actually, putting all the components together on the server so that we can access it from our phone. And now let's see. There we go. The app is now doing what we want. It says, welcome to Daily Affirmations, right? Here we go. And that's all we've built so far. We actually haven't built out any other functionality. You can see from our screen here, our index.tsx screen, we haven't built anything else, but this is all we're expecting, right? The button and the affirmation will go here. We already see that. But this is now a functional app for us, right? We can go in and we can start making all of our changes. We can make our OpenAI API call now. We're gonna do that in short order here. But this is now an app that's built using React Native, using Expo, and it now does something for us, right? So let's go ahead and do this. Okay, that works. Let's move to the next step in our plan. Okay, so move to the next step in our plan. And this is what I'm talking about, where you don't want Cursor to commit any commands for you. We have the ability for Cursor to make code changes for us, and then we can either accept them or not accept them. We can just reject them if we want, but we don't want it to be able to execute commands where, it can just remove files. It can just start, installing SDKs, start just doing stuff that we do not want. So you need to keep that off at all times so it doesn't go haywire for you. Okay, next step, build reusable UI components. We'll start with the centered button, which will be the main button that the user taps. What we'll do, we'll create a centered button in the components folder, which is right here. We can see that the button's been created. Use this button in the TSX or the index.tsx. So in the home screen, we have handle pressed, alert, button pressed. This is where your affirmation will appear. Okay. Centered button. We've added this right here in our view now. With the label generate affirmation. Okay, cool. So here we go. Now we have the reusable components ready to test. Now, all we're going to see here, let's accept these. And the great thing about Cursor is if you don't like anything or just, it doesn't work, you can just restore the checkpoint right here. And it will just reverse all the changes. So let's rebuild. We don't need to rebuild, but let's restart the app. And now we can see on our phone here, generate affirmation. We see a big button. When you press the button, it says button press. Your affirmation will appear here. This is where your affirmation will appear. Okay, cool. Right? So now let's kill that. Kill the app on my phone. Perfect. This works. Please summarize, or please give me a summary table of where we are at and what our next step will be. Please explain this step before we do it, as a non-coder would like to understand. Okay, here we go. And, if you've gotten this far in the video, this is I know it sounds very simple, all this stuff that we've just been going through, but this is where 90% of people would have already quit, where just setting up the actual project and, getting Expo running and getting, Expo Router all configured and, just hooking up the button and just very basic stuff, right? That is where most people trip up already and they would have already quit. So, if you've gotten this far, you're already pretty far along. All right, cool. So we initialized the Expo project. We installed and set up Expo Router, created the project folder structure, set up the router layout in the home screen. We built reusable components for the button. Now we need to implement OpenAI call utility. Okay. So how are we going to do this? Let's go through what Cursor has planned for us. We want the app to generate a new affirmation when the user taps the button. We'll use OpenAI's API. We need a small piece of code, a utility function that will send a request to OpenAI's server, ask for a daily affirmation, receive the affirmation text, and return it to our app. Why do we do it this way? By separating the code that talks to OpenAI in its own file, which is the library openai.ts, our app stays organized and easy to maintain. If we want to change how they're generated, we just need to update one file. Okay, cool. What we'll need, we need an OpenAI API key. We will use a .env file to keep it secret and safe. Okay, cool. That's right here. What's next? Create a file, lib openai.ts, and request an affirmation from OpenAI. Cool. Explain how this works and how it'll be used. Okay, sounds good. If you have your OpenAI key ready, we'll also set up your .env file. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Let's go. We'll create it. Okay, cool. How to keep your key safe. We'll use the .env file. Okay. Here is what we're going to put in our .env file. Okay. So this is where our OpenAI API key will go. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use mine from a previous project, and I will then just, I'll just blank it out. Show you guys. That's what I mean. Okay, so that is in there now. Okay. I've added the API key to .env, and you can add specific files. So to @env. It's not available for API use. Let's move, or please create the next files we need. Okay. Okay. Here we go. So now it's creating the OpenAI.ts file for us in lib. It's slowly creating it for us here. All right. So now what this thing does is it sets up the OpenAI API key for us, and it's going to call OpenAI and get an affirmation for us. So now we have the model that it's going to use. It's going to send over a JSON with the model that it wants to call, the message that it's going to send over. So the system prompt is you're a helpful assistant that generates daily affirmations. Give me a short positive daily affirmation. We can improve this. It's not going to be this powerful if we just use a prompt like that, but this is how it's going to work. These are the errors that will happen if we just run into them, and this is what we're going to return, the affirmation. So we'll accept that. How it works: when you call fetchAffirmation, it talks to OpenAI servers. OpenAI responds to the message. If there's a problem, it will let you know. Next step, use this in the app. So create a custom React hook to manage fetching and storing the information. Update your home screen to use this hook. Okay. Why use a hook? A hook lets us keep track of the affirmation loading state and errors in a way that's easy to use in your UI. Would you like a quick explanation of what a React hook is before we proceed? Yes, please explain a React hook. Then let's proceed. Now let's run this again and just make sure there's been no issues that popped up in that setting up of, just the OpenAI key. OpenAI API key. Okay, cool. The app is working. We still see our nice blue button. We click. We still see, nothing called back because we haven't set up our hook, but we just want to make sure this stuff is working right now. Okay, cool. Now let's see our hook. How does this work? Okay, absolutely. Here's a simple explanation. What is a React hook? And we can see right here that it's set up our hook, and we can see that the code's been implemented. But let's see first, what is a React hook? A React hook is a special function in React that lets you hook into, use React features in your components like state data, side effects, and more. Why use hooks? They help you manage things like loading data, tracking user input, stuff like that. It keeps your code organized and easy to read. Okay, cool. So the most common hooks use state, use effect. Cool, makes sense. I mean, they're basically just little versions. They're like data versions of components, where components is like UI, a hook is like for data. Um, keep track of the current affirmation. No for loading. No if there's an error. Okay, cool. Sounds good. Create the hook. All right, nice. Let's accept how it works. Okay, reload the app, and now it should be hooked up, and we should be getting the affirmation back if everything worked correctly. It's not uncommon for you to get, yeah, there we go. So we're getting OpenAI API key missing, right? So we're getting some kind of error here, or we're getting some kind of issue here. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to screenshot that. I'm going to send it over. Send the image over and put it in here. I'm getting this error when running the app. When I click the button. What could the issue be? And my guess is usually what happens in this kind of scenario is that there are errors in how the data is actually set up, where Expo might be using kind of a new way to pass the AP or environment variables, and we are not necessarily using that new way of doing it. So that's usually how the issue is set up. Okay, so yeah, this is usually what happens is Expo constants checks your app.json file, and so what we can do is we can put in, just for our local development, we can put in our API key right here, where under Expo, where is Expo? Right here, we can put in extra. I should have just copied this the whole way, but whatever. It's fine. It will still work. Okay. Okay, open an API key. And this will grab from our okay. Now what's going on here? Oh, Okay, interesting. Okay, I guess it maybe expects name to be the first one. Okay, here. Oh, shoot. Okay. Wait. I just need to go back now. I need to go back a few steps here. Okay. Let's add extra in here after this shit. Okay. Okay. Except I need to put in my API key now. Right? Okay. This was a bit of a runaround, but we should be good after this. Okay, so let's save that. All right, so now we've added it here. You already know the constants. Okay, cool. Now, and we restart our Expo server. This should work, ideally. All right, let's see now. Where are we? Restart the server. We can see it building. Oh, here we go. Ah, yeah, there's our affirmation. I'm capable, strong, and deserving of all the good things life has to offer. Nice. We can see that in its little own box there. We can see our button. We can see our welcome message. Boom. Let's type it again. Let's hit the button again. Boom. New affirmation. I radiate positivity and attract abundance into my life. True. Let's do a new one. I trust in my ability to handle whatever comes my way today with grace and strength. All right. Let's generate a new one. I am capable, strong, and full of potential. Generate a new one. Generate a new one. I'm worthy of all the good things that come my way. Generate a new one. I'm capable of achieving great things with my positive attitude and determination. Boom. All right. So we're good. All right. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. So now we have created this app and it generates affirmations for us. Okay, that now works. Where are we in our summary table? Okay, cool. A little bit of a slow request on this one, but we'll see it come up soon. There we are. All right, here's our summary table. Okay, store last affirmation locally. We don't really need to store this, so we're going to skip that step. Polish UI and final testing. Okay, cool. Let's skip the storage and go to UI and testing. The main issue is that there is a header that says index, and the title is now left oriented rather than center. Let's address both of those. Please look through our, and here I like to tag the actual files. So I wanted to read through these files because these are two app-based files, the layout and the index, and they should be determining, or maybe the components, but not really, right? So just those two files, and tell me why both of these issues are occurring. No code changes at this time, please. Just diagnose and come up with a course of action. All right, so let's see what it comes back with here. Okay, so we can just override the header by putting, a custom header right here, and then we can set the header title alignment. But that's not what I mean. I actually mean the this is fine, but the text I want centered is the, what is it called? Welcome to Daily Affirmations text. In our @index file. Let's implement both of those changes. Okay, so text align center. I think this is all it changed. The title, text align center. Okay, cool. And header customization and layout. Okay, cool. So return the stack, header title, header align. Okay, cool. Now let's see what happened here. Let's rerun this. Okay. Now let's see if this is what we expect. Here we go. Click Affirmations 2, and boom. All right, welcome to Daily Affirmations. It's now centered, and our header now says Daily Affirmations rather than index. Cool. Now let's generate the affirmation. Boom. I'm capable of achieving great things, and I choose to approach today with a positive attitude. Amazing. Okay. So now, guys, we have built our basic first app. What our app does, it generates a new screen. It lets the user click a button where it will generate a new affirmation by calling OpenAI. It will return that affirmation and display it in a new pop-up that we have just created. So it's doing all this. We just created this new app. We can run it now in Expo Go, and it is live and functioning. So thanks for joining. We can go ahead and add a bunch of things now if we want to. We can create a calendar that has the daily affirmation for every single day. We can make the UI even better if we wanted to, but the core components, which is actually using AI to generate the affirmation, calling that API, returning it, generating a new view, having a button so the user can do it over and over and over. That is all built out now. And those are the actual core components that you need to build any new AI-based app in this world. So, yeah, these are the tools that you need, and I'm excited to see what people build with this. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.